Hey, look, it's another Cleveland Cavalier podcast. And yeah, you should be excited about that. Hopefully. At least I am, because this one's mine and I'm biased. Hi, and welcome to the SportsEthos Cleveland Cavaliers podcast, which you can simply refer to as the CavsCast. My name's Zach, and I have been described by some very, very nice, kind people in the YouTube comments section as an NBA nerd, among other things. So now, thanks to the fine folks at SportsEthos, I'm here to nerd out about my favorite team, the Cavs, with you. Okay, I say nerd out, but really, we're talking hoops backed by the stats you've actually heard of. So, we're welcoming for ball knowers too. Besides, we're all a little nerdy, aren't we? Think about it. We wear matching colored shirts, hats, jerseys. We go to these large gatherings while we debate players and their legacies based off of stats and numbers that tell us how good they are. That's basically cosplay, Comic-Con, and math club. Fandom is fandom, so consider this your safe space to wear your Cavs fandom with pride as we, celebrate our Cavs. And we're going to do that through giving out some made-up weekly awards. We're also going to preview the upcoming games for this week. And in today's episode, I'm going to try to make the absolute best ultimate first impression that I possibly can by telling you everything that this Cavs team is proving me wrong about so far this season. The plan for the podcast is to have one of these for you every Monday, because I can't think of a better way to start a work week than by celebrating the past week of Cavs basketball and then gearing up for the next matchups that are on the schedule. And this isn't going to be the only type of episode that we have on the show either. I'm also going to have some awesome guests that I bring on, like Bob Schmidt from Fear the Fro, who's going to join me on Thursday to break down whether the Cavs should have or will have a trade season this year or not. If all goes according to plan, this will be your new home for informative, engaging, and above all else, entertaining Cleveland Cavalier content. Because, let's face it, I know, as Cavs fans, I am a Cavs fan. I've been a consumer in this space. We have access to a ton of high-quality content. Aside from maybe, the Lakers, the Knicks, the Celtics, perhaps. I'm not sure how many NBA teams have more good creators and podcasts that we can choose from. So it's not lost on me that in order for you to listen or watch this one, I'm going to have to earn it. So let's get started trying to earn that, shall we? With some made-up awards from this past week. So I am recording this on Saturday, and since last Monday, the Cavs have only had 2 games, and they've gone 2-0, improving their overall record to 27-4, which remains the best in basketball. They remain 4 games ahead of the Celtics, who are second in the East, and these 2 wins extend their current winning streak to 6 games. In the first game of the week, they hosted the Jazz on Monday, who came into the game just 7-20. But they had won 2 in a row, so it wasn't all gloom and doom by any stretch of the imagination. The Cavs won this game 124-113. It was obviously a return for Colin Sexton and Lauri Markkanen, who were key pieces in that Donovan Mitchell trade that happened, and they both actually played really well in this game. Sexton, who has quietly become an incredibly efficient guard in Utah, he was coming into the game averaging 17 points and 3 assists while flirting with 50-40-90 shooting splits at 49, 44, and 89%. You're starting to hear his name floated around a little bit, I think, in trade rumor season. I personally would like to see him go somewhere where he can get a chance to play in games that actually matter. He ended this game against the Cavs with 24 points and 5 assists. And Lauri Markkanen has, as the other key player piece that went out in that, he's become a star in Utah, getting kind of a big old nearly $196 million payday this offseason. But the numbers so far on the year aren't going to wow you too much. 19 points, 6.5 boards, 45, 37, and 89 shooting splits are, aside from the free throw line, the worst that he's played so far since going to the Jazz. You wouldn't have known it Monday, though, because he was dropping 26 points and hitting 6 threes on the Cavs. But all in all in this game, the Jazz, they or not in this game, but in that trade, rather, they made out pretty well. And I would say that as Cavs fans, we're not particularly upset about getting Donovan Mitchell back either. He's been worth every penny that we had to give up to give him. One that's easier to forget about, and I promise we won't do this for every single team because every single team doesn't wheel and deal like the Cavs and the Jazz seem to, but Jordan Clarkson. Jordan Clarkson spent some time in Cleveland too. He wasn't part of the Donovan Mitchell trade, obviously, but he was traded to the Jazz by the Cavs 5 years ago in a deal that brought back a player on this current roster. Would you believe me if I told you that one of the second-round picks that the Cavs got back was used to draft Emoni Bates? They got other stuff too, but that's basically ancient history. We're not going to go all the way down that rabbit hole, but I thought that was wild because I didn't honestly think there was anything kind of left around from that deal 5 years ago. The Cavs got a win in this game, as I mentioned. They won it by 11 points, but it wasn't as comfortable as that margin makes it seem. The Cavs were only up 4 at halftime after ending both the first and the second quarter with 3 balls in the closing seconds of the game. Sam Merrill, though, caught fire in the third. He hit 4 of his 6 threes on the game, and they needed it really, really bad. And he needed it. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more later on in this show because that's what gave them a little bit of cushion. And the Jazz ended up cutting into the fourth. It was a 4-point game with like 4 minutes to go. The sequence that stands out in my mind was when Darius Garland threw that kind of like no-look pass to Georges Niang cutting on the baseline, and then Niang just immediately down on the other end gets a steal with a throw-ahead assist to kind of ice the game. All in all, the Cavs had 4 guys in to score over 20 points in that game. Garland finished the game with 20 points, 8 assists, and was a plus 21. Donovan Mitchell had 22 points, 7 assists, 3 steals, and was a plus 17. Evan Mobley had 22 points, 10 rebounds, 3 blocks. He went 3 for 5 from three-point range and was also a plus 17. And as I mentioned, Sam Merrill hit 6 threes in this game. He ended up with 20 points and 3 steals in just 23 minutes. The Cavs then didn't play again until Friday when they went out to Denver to take on Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets. The Nuggets came into that game with a 16-12 record, and they walked out with a good old-fashioned butt whooping. The Cavs won this game 149-135. Joker got another triple-double against the Cavs that didn't matter, and the Cavs got big performances from just about everybody, but the core 4 really showed up, all scoring 20+. Mitchell had 33. Evan Mobley had 26. They both added 5 rebounds and 6 assists apiece. Darius Garland finished with 25 points, 7 assists, and 4 steals in this game. And Jarrett Allen rounded things out with 22 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 steals of his own. So in both of the games this week, the Cavs had 4 players score 20+ points. It seems like that Denver game was kind of an offensive buzzsaw, but the Nuggets did end up keeping it close enough that the Cavs had to just keep their foot on the gas pedal. So it wasn't as I guess, dominant on the scoreboard as what it seemed like their offense was playing. And quite frankly, because, Denver is also a good offensive team and they were able to keep up well enough to keep it interesting. It was definitely awesome enough, though, to win our first award of the week that we're going to give away, which is the People Still Watch Basketball Even Though the NFL Tries to Take Over Christmas award for our game of the week. And that is obviously Cavs in Denver. The Cavs scored 80 points in the first half in this game. Consecutive quarters of 40 points. Bob from Fear the Fro tweeted that those were quarters 10 and 11 of scoring 40, which leads the league. Shout out to Bob, as I mentioned earlier. He's going to be the first guest on this podcast. You're going to hear him Thursday. And I'm really excited about that conversation. The Jazz game was a bit more of a competitive and essentially kind of like came down to the wire type of a game. But to see a whole half of basketball turn into just a giant avalanche, and then, of course, the Cavs offense just goes completely ice cold in the third to only score 36 points and 149 rather in the game. The game of the week is definitely the one the Cavs played in Denver. The next award that we're going to give out is the KD's mom may be the real MVP still, but this is a close second award for Cav of the Week. And 3 guys were deserving of this, but I'm going to go with Evan Mobley. Against the Jazz, I mentioned earlier, he ended up with 22 points, 10 rebounds, 3 blocks, and a steal. He was 3 for 5 shooting the 3 ball, and there were multiple big sequences that came off of a play made by Evan Mobley in that game. There was one where he had a block on one end, he threw it ahead, ran the court, and got rewarded on the other end with a dunk. There was another that came off a block that he had that ended up with, I believe it was a Donovan Mitchell 3 from the left wing. I think that was one of those threes that ended one of the quarters, if I'm remembering correctly. It seemed like he was a momentum driver in that game, along with just being a dominant force of a basketball player. And then against the Nuggets, he absolutely took over in the second half. After Donovan Mitchell kind of scorched the first half, it was a little bit of a passing of the torch in the second, where Evan Mobley, he only shot 1 3-pointer in the first half that he missed. He hit 4 of them in the second half. He only missed 1 shot in the whole second half, scoring 19 of his 26 points. And it's not just that he got hot shooting from deep. He was driving. He was finding teammates, a few times for buckets. He had a big block on the defensive end. It seemed like when the Nuggets might try to make a run, Mobley stepped up and closed that door. His final tally was the 26 points I mentioned, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 block, and 4 for 6 shooting from 3-point range. 48 points in 2 games for Mobley and 7 3-pointers. The leap isn't happening. It's happened. And it's been so much fun to watch. And if he's not an all-star, more than just the game is broken. Our next award is going to be the I Don't Have Friends, I Got Family Award for Quote of the Week. And this one I'm going with full government? And if you're wondering what the heck I'm talking about, before the Jazz game, there was a delay of 30 or 40 minutes probably, because one of the baskets got broken during warmups. And after the game, Darius Garland was asked about it in the locker room, asking if he knew who broke the rim. And as he was talking about not divulging the name of the culprit that may or may not have been responsible, you hear Donovan Mitchell from the background just shouting, "Tristan Thompson," upon which time Garland calls him out, saying that it was Donovan Vernell Mitchell who snitched. And you just hear Donovan in the background, yelling about using his full government name. And I get it. Garland should have had to wear a white wig to practice or something after that, because the only person that's allowed to go full name with your middle name has to be your grandmother. And by the way, you need to follow Spencer at Spin Davies to see the video that he took of this exchange. He gets really good content and makes really good like locker room videos with his access, and it really just captures how high the vibes are on this team right now and how much fun that they're having together. And that's translating for us as fans because it just makes them that much more fun to watch. You can tell a team that is playing and having fun, whether they're even playing well or not. Like there have been teams, even some of those past teams with LeBron at the helm, where they were playing well, but it was like not that fun, and it was more of a relief when they were winning some of those games as opposed to just pure joy. And this team seems to be playing with just pure joy. The next award that we're going to give away is the Have You Heard of This Show Called The Office Award for Moment of the Week. And this one I'm going to give to Sam Merrill, shooting 4 for 5 from 3 in the third quarter alone against the Jazz was a big moment in that game because it was the turning point that gave the Cavs kind of a cushion that they needed because the Jazz would later make a run in that game. But it was also a big moment, I think, and I hope for Sam. Going into the Utah game, he was shooting just 32% from 3, which is actually amazing considering that last year he was a 40% three-point shooter and the best on the team of anybody that played real minutes. And this year, he's taking the same amount of threes, and he's not hitting them. And yet the Cavs are still the best three-point shooting team in the NBA. For him to have a moment like that culminates in a 6 for 11 night against Utah, and then following it up with 3 for 4 in Denver, we might be seeing that positive regression where this team's best shooter starts shooting like it. And that's a very scary proposition for the rest of the league because they're already so incredibly dangerous from 3. The next award that we are going to do is the Matt Rife Second Funniest Comedian from Ohio Award for Laugh of the Week. And this one I'm going with Darius Garland starting to sing Holly Jolly Christmas during his post-game walk-off interview after that Jazz win. I didn't know that I needed to know what Darius Garland's singing voice sounded like. Now I'm wondering how I, or frankly anyone, has ever lived without it. If you missed it, after the Jazz game, Serena Winters did the regular post-game interview, snagged Darius Garland for it, and asked him if he had a message for the fans after the last game before the holidays would come, and he just starts singing Happy Holly Jolly Christmas. And I'm not even upset that he got the lyrics wrong. I am upset that he didn't sing more of this song because I need more of Darius Garland singing in my life now, and I think that he should do an album, maybe a lullaby album, so that we can play it for our children to put them to sleep and have them dream of Cavalier basketball. Now, let's do our final award for the week, and we're going to call this one the Let's Prove Our Third Grade Math Teacher Wrong When They Said That We Never Learned Anything Useful If All We Ever Cared About Was Basketball Award for Number of the Week. And this one I'm going with 20, as in 20 plus three-pointers made as a team, which they accomplished in both games this past week, extending their streak to 4 straight games accomplishing that feat. Per Fedor, it's the first time in franchise history that the Cavs have done that, and just the second team ever, the other being last year's champion, Boston Celtics. And I talked about this on the Block the Shot the Stop podcast, which I recommend you go listen to that episode, so I won't spoil it all here. But the Cavs have really cranked up their three-point volume during this stretch, and as their attempts are going up, so is their accuracy. They've increased their three-point attempts by about 20% here over the past handful of games, 5-6 games, and yet they're hitting them above their season average. That already leads the NBA in three-point percentage. This team is just absolutely shooting the lights out. So, that concludes our weekly awards segment. If you would like to have some nominations for next week's awards, whether they be these same categories or you want to come up with your own, I would love to hear it. Go ahead and let's say for this one, go ahead and tweet at me either on Bsky or on X at Zach-NBA and use, let's do like hashtag CavsCast and let me know who you think should win, what award you are giving them for the next week of Cavalier basketball, and I'll see what we get and feature it in the show. That sound like a plan? I think so. So I mentioned at the beginning of this episode that I thought I'd spend some time in this first show to try to, let's say, convince you of just how smart I am. And what better way to do that than to share with you what I got wrong about this Cavs team coming into the season. And I'm going to start with, I absolutely loved the Kenny Atkinson hire. You can see it on my personal YouTube channel. It's that Zach-NBA that I mentioned earlier. And by the way, I spell Zach with a C. I made a video as soon as that was announced about how excited I was. But I did not think that he would make this big of a difference for this team. He's got the same group of guys playing like just a whole new ball club, which isn't news to you. You're aware of that. You're a Cavs fan and you've been watching all year, but this is the first time I've got to actually express it on this platform, so I'm gonna do so. The pace, the movement, it's been amazing to watch and has exceeded just every expectation I had for what this group was even remotely capable of, particularly on offense. Now, I pulled a lot of these numbers on Christmas, so there might be some slight shifts after that Denver game, but he's had them playing as a top offense in the NBA. Second in points, first in offensive rating, largely because of the way that they're playing. Yes, they are absolutely just shooting out of their minds. They're top in field goal percentage, three-point percentage, effective field goal percentage, true shooting percentage, whatever metric you want to use to measure how accurate you take orange ball, put in orange hoop, they're leading the league in it. But they're also top 8 in pace without turning the ball over, 4th fewest in that regard. They have the best assist to turnover ratio. They're 3rd in turnover percentage. They're moving the ball and they're taking care of it at the same time, and they've done that consistently all year long. And while it hasn't been as consistently strong as the JB-led teams, the defense hasn't completely fallen off either. They're 9th in the league overall in defensive rating and 3rd in the month of December. It all adds up to the the second best net rating and the best record in basketball. It's been insane to watch. And we heard throughout the offseason how Kenny got the job is by selling the front office on how good or how he thought that he could unlock the core 4 and that Evan Mobley was the key for that. And I believed that he could do it. I thought he could get more out of those guys. His experience coaching the Nets was awesome. That team was, they quite frankly weren't very good, and he had them overachieving and playing just in a perfect style for them. But then his experience, particularly in Golden State, is where I was really excited. If there's any team to model an offense that was in desperate need of spacing, it's theirs. You know, they didn't get all those open looks because Steph and Clay were great shooters. They got all of those open looks because they're great movers. And movement was frustratingly absent on this Cavs team the past couple of years, particularly when it mattered most. There were just far too many possessions where it was, you know, a high pick and roll with either Darius or Donovan just watching, you know, sometimes all the way out at half court. And then there was, you know, 2 guys camped out in the corner. And that felt dynamic, you know, compared to the Donovan Mitchell hero ball in isolation with 4 guys just standing still that they sometimes fell into. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a JB basher by any stretch of the imagination, and that's not what it was always like watching this team in the past. The moment that Donovan Mitchell got to Cleveland, the fun factor, increased significantly, but we all know that the offense had a tendency to stall out when games got tight or the playoffs started. And I thought that Kenny would be able to help, but I did not think that it would be this impactful and we'd be talking about the best offense in basketball. I did go into this past offseason believing that it was time for a big decision in Cleveland. And it was fortified with that Mitchell extension. To me, the thing that I had in mind was either you're committed to the core four or you're not. If not, obviously, you had to make a move with one or perhaps two of the core four. Jarrett Allen was the one that we talked about most, or was talked about most as the most obvious candidate. We all heard that Garland might ask out if Mitchell stayed. Those rumors that went around, which didn't seem to be all that highly have all that much merit to them, but they were out there. And to be clear, I wasn't a Cavs fan who believed that you had to break up the core four by any stretch of the imagination. But I did feel like the previous year was one of those let's just give it another year and see what happens type of seasons. And I did not believe that this could be one of those and you just keep kicking the can down the road. You're all in or you're not. Make the call. And if you're committed to them, you had to do something with the supporting cast to better maximize the strengths of the core four that you have and minimize the weaknesses as a group that they had together. And they definitely committed to the core four in contract, but they didn't address any of those supporting cast issues that I believed and honestly still have some questions about, but it hasn't really mattered yet. They're getting incredible performance up and down this roster. And quite frankly, I did not believe that all of this was possible to happen all at one time. We've seen Karras get hot, but he's playing the best basketball of his career. He's 6th in the NBA in three-point percentage. He's completely changed his shot diet. He's only taken 3 shots all year in long 2 range. That was, again, going into the Denver game. I would need to go back and look at his shot chart to see if he added 1 or 2, but at that point, he had only taken 13 mid-range shots all year. He's gone full on just rim or 3 analytic basketball, and it's completely changed his value as a player. Dean Wade looks like the perfect role player, whether he's playing with the core or in bench units, and he's doing it with confidence that seems to have eluded him, at times in the past. His net rating as a starter is 10.7. They have a 104.1 defensive rating when he starts, which would be second best in basketball behind only the Thunder if they were able to do that full time. And when he doesn't start, his net rating is still 13, and the defensive rating is almost identical at 104.7. He's the perfect role player, especially on defense, and you just hope that he stays mostly available. Isaac Okoro deserves a shout out. He's hitting above the break threes without hesitation. While he's not shooting a ton of them, he went into the Denver game second in the league in 3-point percentage, and I credit again Bob from Fear the Fro for doing this math on the fly. That after Jokic missed a few threes in that Nuggets game, that actually should push Isaac ahead of him to be the top 3-point shooter in basketball by a percentage standpoint. And we've seen some flashes of playmaking out of the short roll from him that I just simply didn't think that he was capable of earlier in his career. Sam Merrill was a surprise find last year, and just okay, he's just awesome. He hasn't been shooting the ball as well as I mentioned earlier in the awards section, but he's starting to catch fire as of late. Ty Jerome is clearly just from another planet. And he's not even been a rotational NBA player up to this point in his career. And that all of that stuff is happening while Georges Niang is looking better and the core four is what the core four is. I just did not have on my bingo card the idea that all of these guys could play out of their minds all at the same time. The core four could, so far, knock on wood, remain healthy to this point, and all of this come together as the best team in the NBA. That is just not what I expected, and that's them just flat out proving me wrong from where I came into the season. Before we go to the next section of this show where I'm going to do some rapid fire takes, I've only got a couple for you today, but I do want to remind you that this is a brand new show on the SportsEthos Network, and we need your help to grow it. So if you could please hit the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, and leave a 5-star rating in a podcast app if you're listening to it there right now. It would go just a super long way to showing those evil algorithms that we're actually worthy of being served up to people, and I would greatly appreciate it. Did you do it? Okay, great. So we're going to go rapid fire. I've just got a couple of takes for you. These should be quick, maybe at times a bit teeny tiny spicy, a little bit. They may end up on social media and breakout videos. We shall see. But the first one is Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell are the best backcourt in basketball. 43 plus points per game combined. Third amongst starting backcourt mates behind only Luka, Kyrie, and Harden and Powell. They're both among the best players in the clutch. They're shooting 50 and 60% from three in the clutch, and they have 47 and 48.2 net ratings in the clutch. There's no other backcourt duo that you want on the floor when the game is on the line more than Mitchell and Garland. Yeah. The next one that I've got for you is Evan Mobley should be a candidate for both Most Improved Player and Defensive Player of the Year. According to Google, no player has ever won both of those awards in the same year, and I think that that's reflected in the odds. As of Christmas, Mobley was a plus 1,500 on FanDuel for Defensive Player of the Year behind Wemby, who was at minus 250, and Jaren Jackson Jr., who was at a plus 500. And he's plus 3,000 for Most Improved Player behind a bunch of dudes that he just shouldn't be. The defense has always been there for Mobley, and if you need the numbers, he's defended the fourth most shots at the rim in the NBA this year, and he's still holding opponents to within 1 percentage point of Jaren Jackson Jr. and Wemby. But the improvement for him is coming on the offensive end. Not just scoring more, which he's doing, not just shooting over 40% from three, which he's doing. It's how he's doing it. Pushing the ball in transition himself, running inverted pick and rolls. He's punishing smaller guys. He's got guys respecting his three ball enough to attack closeouts, and he's rewarding them with highlight dunks on what feels like a nightly basis at this point. His usage is up considerably. He gets almost the exact same number of touches per game as Donovan Mitchell does. He's legit become a hub of this offense, and they play through him while he still anchors the defense. It's been incredible. Now, the final thing that we're going to do in today's episode, I appreciate you hanging out with me so far, is we're going to take a look at what is next and what is on the docket for the rest of the week. The Cavs will be continuing their road trip out west. The upcoming schedule looks like this. Monday, or tonight if you're listening to this on release day, the Cavs are in San Francisco to take on the Golden State Warriors. It'll be a late start for us in Eastern time at 10 o'clock. Then on Tuesday, they'll head down to LA for the second night of a back-to-back against the Lakers, and that's a 9 p.m. tip Eastern. They'll get a couple of days before they head into Dallas to face the Mavericks, and that one's going to come on at 8:30, and then they'll close out a busy week on Sunday back at home hosting the Hornets at 6. Now, of those games, I think the most dangerous one is that Lakers game. Coming off a back-to-back, it could be really tough. AD's having a monster season. LeBron is obviously just LeBron, regardless of what the on-off numbers going around social media tell you, especially for a Cavs team that isn't loaded with 6'9" freight trains. Individual matchups aside, though, it could be easy for fans to overlook this Lakers team a bit, given how, especially Cavs fans, given how the Cavs blew the doors off of them in the first matchup in Cleveland. It was fantastic, the fact that Bronny James got to play so much in the fourth quarter, because that game was just over. But don't don't look past this team. The Lakers are a different team at home. When I pulled these together, they were 9-3 at home. Their offensive rating was 7th best in the NBA in home games, which was 8 points better than they are on the road, where their offense ranks just 23rd in the league. Their pace picks up a little. Their defense improves. The net rating jumps from -7 on the road to +2.5 at home. And their true shooting percentage jumps from 55 to almost 61, which is actually 4th best in the league in home games. They might not be true title contenders in the West at this point, but they'll have the rest advantage being on the front end of their own back-to-back, and it could easily become a bit of a rough night for the Cavs if they don't show up, on their game. A few notable storylines outside of that we can take a look at for these coming games. The Warriors, after a hot start to the season, have basically fallen off a cliff. As of today, they're a 500 team who's lost 3 in a row. They're 3-7 in their last 10, and they're outside of the playoff picture in the 11th seed in the West. And the trade rumors are starting to really pick up. The Mavericks have had their own bad luck in the form of an injury to their star MVP candidate, Luka Doncic. He only played, I think it was 16 minutes on Christmas, and it sounds like they'll reevaluate him in a month. So he's going to be out a minimum of a month, which is not great for my fantasy team, in case you were wondering. Finally, that Hornets game, they're the Hornets. They've only won 7 games this year. They've lost 6 in a row. LaMelo Ball scoring 30 a game and has had plenty of highlights for social media, but they're a ways away from putting something together that's particularly meaningful in Charlotte. It's not going to be an easy stretch of games for the Cavs by any means, but there are a few things kind of leaning in their favor. And this run of opponents did look a bit more intimidating earlier in the season. Still, you can't take anybody for granted in the NBA. These are all professionals. We saw it with the Jazz. They had only won 7 games too, and the Cavs needed every bucket down the stretch to put that one away. So don't look past any of these teams. This is a bit of a tough stretch, even if some of these teams are not maybe playing up to their level of expectation or on particularly hot streaks of their own. So that's it for today. If you made it to the end, please leave a like if you're on YouTube, or rate the show 5 stars in the podcast app that you're using right now. Next time you hear from me, I'll be joined by Bob Schmidt from Fear the Fro, and we'll discuss whether the Cavs should have a trade season this year or not, and what that could potentially look like. And now that the episode is officially over, go ahead and open your app store and download the SportsEthos app for one of the best blurb feeds in the business. Cavs players, fantasy tools, and updates, it's all there for you. Check it out in the SportsEthos app. I'm Zach. Thanks for nerding out, Cavs fans.